Also an up-and-coming Magic player, and he's playing Mono Blue Devotion.
Yeah, Todd's playing, as many of the blue-white players are today, he's playing the Saito build of blue-white. What I think is really relevant about saying that is that the Saito build of blue-white plays a full 4 Archangel of Thune in the sideboard, which really, I don't know if a lot of the Mono Blue has adapted to that yet. Certainly that's going to be problematic, as we'll see in post-board games for Lowry.
Yeah, we touched on that card a couple times in this broadcast, both in Brian Brondawin's Mono White Devotion deck and about sideboards in general, where Archangel's very good against decks like Mono Blue Devotion.
All right, and we are underway. That's a turn 1 Cloudfin Raptor from Lowry, and just a Temple for Todd. So Todd, no way to evolve it, though. Todd's going to get a little bit of time to develop his board here.
And that's a really critical turn for Anthony there. It's really important for him to keep the pressure up as he's going to start facing down cards like, like Supreme Verdict, like Detention Spheres, taxing his creatures. So stumbling early on can give Todd a lot of breathing room.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game that game 1 is already very difficult for Lowry in this matchup, mainly because he can't counter any cards, and he doesn't have a good resilience to Supreme Verdict yet. So he just has to run out creatures and really hope that he can deal enough damage pre-Verdict to still be safe. And there's always the chance that, once Todd Revelations for 6 or something, the game is typically out of reach for Anthony. Mm-hmm. But he's able to get some damage in. It's Cloudfin's evolved by a Judge's Familiar, Mutavault attacks. We have Todd down to 17.
Todd giving the first indicator of the game that he's actually playing a blue-white control deck with Hallowed Fountain.
Yeah, I mean, off the 2 temples, it's possible that Anthony still thought Todd is on mono black. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really change his game plan too much, but it could. We see another swing from Lowry here. It's going to put Todd to 13, but no more lands for Anthony. It could be problematic for him.
Yeah. This is not the best start for Anthony here. His board's not really that developed. We see a Jace here that's going to tick up.
Yeah, if Todd had kept a Supreme Verdict hand, this would actually be pretty decent because of the Mutavault he has in play, but Jace Architect of Thought is particularly strong right now because Todd doesn't have... It's taken away Anthony's ability to deal any damage, and it's not an instant. It's not a source. It's not a one-shot thing. This is going to continue happening until Anthony can remove the Jace.
And you saw Anthony there contemplate, I believe, using a rapid hybridization on his Judge's Familiar to evolve and add another token to play. Decides against, but finds a second blue.
All right, we're going to see Tidebinder Mage is the play for Lowry. It's going to evolve Cloudfin up to a 2. So let Lowry push 2 damage on the Jace. But that just shows the kind of work that's being done here. What would have been a 5 damage attack is reduced down to 2. He's hardly even able to make a dent on Jace. And it looks like he's not even, it's possible. I don't even know if he attacked the Jace. I think he might have just gone for Todd.
Yeah. He might not be able to just whittle that thing down. But if you can't keep Todd off of using Jace, if you get Jace to 1, that's a deal. That's a big difference maker. But if you're only getting it down to 2, he might feel like he's better served just going at Todd until he can kill Jace in one shot, or potentially just forced to ignore it for the remainder of the game.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the power here, right? Todd's cast 1 spell all game in Jace, and it's actually, it's enough just by itself because of the hand that Lowry's kept. We see a 5th land for Todd. It's a Temple. He's developing his mana base, does have the Supreme Verdict, and has opted still to not use it. Jace ticks up to 6, and we are back on Lowry's turn. So he decides to see how he can make a dent into the Jace, into Todd's life total. He has it at 11. Still needs to deal an additional 11.
Yeah, Jason Supreme Verdict is just the squeeze 101. Jace compels you to add more creatures to the table, and Supreme Verdict wipes them all away.
Yeah, and we see Anthony's main deck has been somewhat tuned to beat aggro decks. You see the Domestication in his hand right now. That's not going to be relevant this game. Evolves Cloudfin up to a 3/4. I see other cards, Master of Waves in his hand. He does have Night Veil, but he hasn't had triple blue yet.
And you're also seeing the power of Mutavault plus Jace. That's actually holding off most of Anthony's team right now.
Yeah, so we see, all right, another land drawn for Todd. He does have the Revelation. He does have the Verdict. He still has the Jace online. And it looks like we are going to see Supreme Verdict. So patiently held, patiently cast, and Todd scores a 4-for-1 off the Verdict. With Jace in play, that will put Anthony in a pretty big hole right now.
Yep. Jace is still looming over everything. Todd's getting close to being able to deploy Aetherling with mana up, cast a big Revelation. I mean, this is a textbook way that blue-white control wants to address this matchup.
All right, well, that pause does allow Lowry to resolve a Thassa, but because he doesn't have counter spells, we're in game 1, that Revelation is still looming in Todd's hand.
Yeah. I actually wouldn't even be surprised to see Todd just run an Aetherling out there.
Yeah, that is certainly available to him. He doesn't really have to fear the Thassa because there's no card that Thassa can draw here that's going to rescue the game for Lowry.
Todd's not willing to risk anything here, just says...
Yeah, the card he'd have to watch out for, and this is a long ways up, would be Bident of Thassa. That's probably the only card that can pull, game 1 that can pull Anthony back from a deficit like this.
Well, as you mentioned it, Anthony actually does draw Bident for the turn.
Well, let's hope, but fortunately for him, Todd is he's been very patient on this detention sphere that's in his hand. And so Anthony's going to go ahead and run out the Master in hopes that next turn he can Bident draw 3. Except the pair of Mutavaults will actually make that pretty difficult too.
Again, Jace plus Mutavault and Jace plus Wrath are two angles here that are causing a lot of problems for Anthony.
Yeah. So Rev for 4 and Inset for Todd. It's a pretty spicy one. It draws him a Dissolve and another 2 Sphinx's Revelations. So he doesn't really have to fear the Bident anymore. Should be able to clean up the board as he draws Supreme Verdict for the turn and has another Revelation to continue pulling ahead. And we see Sphere. This will likely go on Thassa, and it does.
Todd is also threatening Jace Ultimate not too far away.
Right, and then that's just the kicker, because the Jace Ultimate, he is very legitimately threatening a Jace Ultimate, and that's an Ultimate he doesn't even need. You know, his hand is more than enough to win the game right now. So he just continues developing his mana base. He does have the Supreme Verdict. He's not even committing it yet. We'll see. Anthony's probably going to run out the Bident, hoping that he can get some... Well, he can't even really, because he can't attack.
Right.
Again, the pair of Mutavaults, yeah.
Jace +1 and Mutavaults are preventing Anthony from really attacking very much here.
All right, so instead he's going to try for a Jace. That will get the Dissolve out of Todd's hand. Todd has a Syncopate on top. I imagine he will keep that. And thanks to Dissolve, 3 damage can come across it, which will put the Architect of Thought back down to 4, safely out of ultimate range.
But this is all Anthony spinning his tires right now. He's not really...
Well, the axis he's making progress on is Todd's Jace, and that's not what the game's about. The game's about Todd's lands and Revelations, and because Anthony's having to focus all his resources on Jace, that's just going unchecked. You know, if Anthony wins the Jace war, Todd's going to Revelation for 7 or something.
Yeah. Todd also is sitting on a Supreme Verdict in hand at any time in case things get out of control here.
Yeah.
So
he has a finisher, he has a sweeper, he has a counter spell, and he has 2 Revelations. And more lands. I have to imagine that he has all the tools he needs here.
So we're going to see Todd. Looks like he's going for Aetherling.
Yeah, and there's a lull here. It seems like he is able to, and you can just see the confidence right now that Todd has in the game. He goes ahead and shocks for the Hallowed Fountain. Really not concerned with his own life total at the moment. I think it's because he wants to be able to activate Mutavault and have Jace and have Aetherling mana up to protect from rapid hybridization.
Yeah, some weird combination of cards that Anthony potentially has.
Yeah, and I mean, he could shock or not shock there. Actually, if Anthony gets the Aetherling, Todd isn't particularly concerned either, even if the Aetherling dies. Obviously, you never want to let Aetherling die, but if say Anthony had the double rapid, that would be fine. Mm-hmm. Todd would be okay losing Aetherling. Of note, he has to play a little more conservatively. This is because he's playing the Saito build, he does not have Elixir. So what that means is he actually has to be concerned with the number of threats remaining in his deck. The Elixir builds don't care about losing their own threats, they just reshuffle them. But Todd's threats are 1 Aetherling, 3 Elspeth, 4 Jace. The Jaces count because they can find a threat out of Anthony's deck. But he has to make sure that he uses one of those 8 cards to win the game.
And I believe that was just a shutting of the door on game 1 right there, as Anthony wasn't really able to attack, and things are only getting worse from here.
Yep, Aetherling unblockable, probably just 4 damage. No need to be aggressive on Todd's part. Put Anthony down to 16. Felt like he's gonna make a pump. I know he's gonna flicker it out. Go ahead and Supreme Verdict, well now that Aetherling is off the board. I'll take care of Master of Waves.
And this is really a representation of how far ahead Todd is in the game here. I think if for no other reason he wants to Supreme right there because he actually wants to start attacking with his Mutavaults.
Right, and that will clear the way. End-step rapid hybridization by Lowry clears the way of Aetherling. That means that for this turn and this turn only, there will be no Aetherling blocker. But that really just doesn't help much for Lowry right now. Yeah, he's going to cast Night Veil Spectre. That is unlikely to get the Syncopate. Oh, this doesn't even counter it.
Yeah, that Night Veil Spectre nowhere near worthy enough of a counterspell from Todd at this stage.
Yeah, we see a second Jace. And my guess is we'll just see 2 Aetherling swings. But whichever way, we may see that. We may see an Aetherling swing and then a Giant Revelation. Whichever way Todd chooses to play this, all roads should lead to the same place.
So Todd looks like making an Aetherling unblockable.
Right, and that is the 4 mana. Looks like he's going to go for a pair of 8s. 8 this turn, 8 next. That should add up to the 16. And here's swing number 1. Gets in the red zone. Anthony down to 8 and on a 1-turn clock. We see another aggressive shock land by Todd. Just no care in the world here. And Island by Lowry. A swing of Night Veil Spectre. Puts Todd to 10. Anthony gets a Plains, and that'll be gone to game 2. I'm not certain if at that point, there were any cards that would get it for Anthony there. That's one of the beautiful parts about like I guess the Stranglehold lock that Control puts on the Revelation deck does. Once it gets that far ahead, your opponent is really drawing dead.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, all he has is rapid hybridizations and potentially fog and it filling a turn, but it's just impossible for him to grace. So moving on to the sideboard now, we'll look at Todd's sideboard first. He has a Pithy Needle, 3 Dark Betrayals that he's casting off of his Scrylands, 3 copies of Gainsay, 4 Soldier of Pantheon, 4 Archangel of Thune. I definitely anticipate we're going to see the Gainsays and the Archangels come in. Potentially wants Pithy Needle as well as an answer to Mutavault, even though he has those of his own, and Thassa, but certainly Archangel and Gainsay are going to be coming in here.
Yeah, so this matchup gets a lot more difficult for Todd post-board. I guess the way to start talking about the matchup is to start on Lowry's side. So the big thing that changes is Lowry's deck. Typically, he boards out some number of Master of Waves, all the Cloudfin Raptors. You just want all your creatures to be threats on their own, which Cloudfin is not. And then he'll board in every removal spell under the sun. He'll board in 4 Gainsay, 2 Negate, maybe even some Dissolves. He'll board in extra Bidens and extra Jaces. The idea is he'll try to land 1 threat and continue to be proactive with 1 threat until Todd deals with it, then replace the threat with another one. All the time kind of making these difficult to answer permanents in Jace, Bident, and Thassa.
Yeah, and it's interesting you should say that. That also explains why you would want something like Archangel. Because trying to sit back on your heels the whole game and use removal spells and sweepers as your game plan is a lot less effective when your opponent's bringing counter spells and making each threat more individually impactful with a card like Bident. Archangel can just play to the board now that the mono blue deck's a little bit slower to the board. It's not coming out of the gates as fast. It's probably cut a lot of its creature removal. You can just steal a game with Archangel.
Yeah, the difficult part playing this from the control side is that you can't actually control the game because the mono blue deck has more counter spells than you after sideboard, which is kind of an amusing situation. You're the control deck and you actually have fewer counters. And the card you can never resolve are a relevant Jace or a Sphinx's Revelation. And because Lowry's deck becomes makes all their threats so impactful, eventually you don't lose until about turn 12, but they actually run you out of cards. You play more lands than mono blue, you end up drawing more lands. They continue to hit you with a threat. They get increasing value off Bidens and Thassas. And that's the mono blue game plan, so which is why Archangel's really interesting. It's a different game plan. You're not trying to control the game. You're trying to slam an Archangel now.
Right.
And I think Archangel was chosen over other cards because it can't be... If you listen to the cards he's boarding in Gainsays and Negates, and neither of those hit Archangel of Thune.
Yeah, definitely finding a non-blue card is really important since all these blue decks have...
A non-blue creature card, especially. So he has very few answers. It forces Anthony to either leave in Domestications or leave in Rapid Hybridizations if he wants an answer to Archangel at all.
For those of you just joining us, Patrick Sullivan, Matthias Hunt. Star City Games Standard Open here in Baltimore. We're in round 4, where we saw Todd Anderson playing blue-white control quickly and easily pick up game 1 against Anthony Lowry playing mono blue devotion.
Yeah, and game 1 is one that is just tough for Lowry. All right, we do have game 2 underway. The turn 1 Judges Familiar is played by Lowry, and this is a start that's really scary for Todd. Turn 1 Judges Familiar into turn 3 Thassa is pretty much unanswerable by the control deck in that he gets to resolve the Thassa every time.
And you see Todd here, he had the option of playing Mutavault to leave up Gainsay, but he doesn't have access to Gainsay this turn because of the Judges Familiar. Just plays his tap land instead.
What's the point?
Right.
If your opponent just gets the Thassa. Yeah, the only line the deck has to counter a Thassa through Judges Familiar would be to do something like Needle of Judges Familiar, which you would never want to do. But he gets a pretty big reprieve in that Anthony missed his 3rd land drop.
Right, and this is part of the risk of sideboarding the way that the mono blue deck does in the matchup is its deck becomes more expensive and more reactive, so missing land drops is doubly disastrous.
Yeah, we see Anthony hit this 3rd land on turn 3, but now the Thassa's not really safe. You know, Todd's Gainsay can hit the Thassa. I think he still needs to run one out, but he's not going to do it, actually.
Yeah, I guess he's leaving up Gainsay potentially to answer a Jace from Todd.
Well, if he can make the Jace Thassa trade, he may even want to do it. Okay, he's going to wait till he has land. The problem is, like, he still can't play Thassa this turn. He has to wait until turn 5 to play Thassa. Yeah, and it looks like that's the line he's going to go for. He plays a 4th island. He is just doing the 1 threat plus counterspells game plan. He's doing that fairly well right now.
Yeah, and Todd's happy to play the game this way because him making his land drops here, he's going to eventually be able to overpower whatever permission Anthony has access to.
Yeah, well, you see there's an Archangel of Thune in Todd's hand. And now it'll be interesting. Anthony's hit land 5. He is going to go for the Thassa, which is going to get Gainsayed. And Anthony does not Gainsay back, though. The problem is he's only left up 2 mana, and this is where Archangel's really relevant. Had he left up 3, he'd have a Dissolve, but he doesn't. And I don't think Todd is going to respect a Syncopate. He's going to respect a Syncopate by shocking, but he's going to go for... Okay, he's going to go for Jace with Gainsay up. I was expecting him actually to jam an Archangel there.
Well, this play also squeezes more out of Anthony. He has to add more to the board to fight through this Jace. Sets up Todd's Supreme Verdict. It's possible he's worried about just domestication that turn.
Right. This does give, so the plus from Todd is pretty big. This does give Anthony a window to resolve Thassa. He could play Thassa Frostburn. He could probably just plays Thassa, would be my guess.
But again, Anthony in the Jace squeeze, it just causes him to have to add more to the board.
Yeah, he wants to leave up Dissolve because he knows, he's played it all against the Saito list, he knows that post-board there's 4 Archangels, 3 Elspeths in the deck. There's a lot of things at 5 and 6 that you actually have to counter that need to be dissolved. And I would think that Todd's going to make one of those plays. So he's going to go for Thassa. Pass turn. I don't think he's happy about this line.
No.
If Todd gets this Elspeth down, that's very difficult for Anthony to beat.
Again, especially in conjunction with the Supreme Verdict, we know that Todd has access to.
Right.
It just forces Anthony further and further down the line of having to overextend to put any pressure on Todd's Planeswalkers.
Yeah, and this all can be traced back to that missing the 3rd land drop is the thing. A tempo deck needs its tempo plays so much.
Especially when it's trying to say go with a bunch of counterspells in its hand after getting a certain density of pressure on play.
Yeah, it needs to get that initial pressure. Because the problem is, instead of protecting Thassa Judges Familiar, it was just protecting Judges Familiar, which isn't really enough pressure to be considered pressure.
Right.
And you see Elspeth does result for Todd. It makes 3 tokens. And now Jace is plus to 6, and Anthony is in a bind. And thanks to Nightveil Spectre, he does have an online Thassa. He pretty much has to make it unblockable, and it's going to go at one of the walkers. By making it unblockable here, though, that's going to give Todd, once again, freedom to resolve spells.
Yep.
And as we know, he's got a good one. He's got a good one coming up.
He's got a couple good ones coming up.
All right, another land run. He has double. His hand is land, double revelation, Archangel, Supreme Verdict. Really, I don't think there's a wrong spell for him to choose here.
I believe that attack from Todd indicates that he's going to be using his Supreme Verdict this turn.
Well, he could still not, because they're not blocking, really. All right, Supreme Verdict is made. Elspeth. Oh yeah, Elspeth makes more soldiers, Jace pluses, land into play, and we're back where we were a turn ago, but Anthony's minus his board.
Right, and Jace is also threatening ultimate soon as well, so.
Right.
A lot of really the blue-white control decks, the Esper control decks, there's a lot of individually powerful cards, of course. There's a lot of synergies in the deck, too. The Planeswalkers especially play well with one another.
Well, and there's something we see from a lot of, it's a very Shaheen Sarani style strategy. Play a Planeswalker, play a second Planeswalker, play a Supreme Verdict, and then just, keep using your Planeswalkers. Is just kind of it's a pretty good formula in general, almost regardless of what the Planeswalkers are doing.
Yep. So Anthony is going to use this window to resolve his own Jace.
All right. He does have his own Jace. He has Frostburn Weird. He's making dents. He's able to turn his Thassa online, which is pretty relevant for him. But because he's behind, he's not able to leave up the mana for his counter spells.
Yeah. And this is the problem with the counter spells in this matchup. It's all predicated on actually getting out in front in the first place.
Right, which he was unable to do because of the missed land drop on turn 3. Actually, just for having missed the land drop, he recovered decently well.
Yeah, he had a lot of power in his hand, and he's had, has a lot of tools to fight with, but slogging through these Planeswalkers is a real challenge.
And Todd's going to go ahead and cast Revelation, refilling his hand, plussing the Planeswalkers, making creatures. And he's just going to go ahead and do this main phase. Not worried about any spells from Anthony's deck at this point.
Todd's done a really excellent job at playing around these counter spells. Yeah. Anthony has not been able to use them to much effect thus far.
You see Gale Rider Sliver in Anthony's hand. That's a one of in the main deck that he's played.
This is another creature that's good with Biden, as it's a 1-power flyer. Also combos with Mutavault in some corner case scenarios.
Yeah, it's better than Cloudfin in the matchup because at least it doesn't need any help in getting a point of power, which is what you need because you're playing Biden.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all these cards, these Judges Familiars, they all get swept up by Jace as part of the problem.
Right, and the Jace Elspeth combo is pretty big here.
And Todd now, again, with a full card of hand, having just successfully read.
All right, so let's go back to we've been talking about a lot, Archangel of Thune in the matchup, or just in general in the metagame. We saw Todd have one this game. He's actually hasn't cast it yet. But how do you feel like, it's changed the contour, I guess, of this game? Like the fact that Todd had that, if he were under more pressure, would have that made the difference?
Yeah. I think it still definitely matters. It might matter here. I mean, this might be, Todd's probably been slow to resolve it because he's wanted this Supreme Verdict. He's maybe concerned about rabbit hybridization or domestication, but Anthony is very low on resources. And now he might move to a different phase of the game where he uses removal spells on things. You can use Last Breath on a Weird, for example, this turn, and just try to win with Archangel backed up by removal spells. It's a really multifaceted game plan that Todd has access to.
Yeah, so we see Anthony was able to get rid of the Elspeth thanks to Ratchet Bomb. He was able to make a play that looks like he gets ahead on board, but as we know, and I think Anthony knows too, he's expecting a haymaker of an answer from Todd here.
Right, all these things, they don't represent forward progress from Anthony. It's dealing with what's on the board, but of course Todd still has a lot of life to work with and a lot of cards in hand as well.
Right, we see him get more cards. Jace, Dissolve, and a land. Todd will probably take the Dissolve. That's certainly the best card here. So yeah, a correct split by Anthony. Jace represents more card draw, which Todd really doesn't need. The plus ability is nice, and he might take it for that reason, but if he wants a plus ability, he could also just protect his own Jace.
And there is some charm to playing Archangel with Dissolve backup as well.
Absolutely. He's gonna go ahead and take land, Jace. That's fine. That means he doesn't have to protect his Jace here. Like I said, both plans are good. I think one of the things he'll try to do is he'll try to make sure that last breath hits the Mutavault right now. It's one of his few ways to answer Mutavault. But I would expect him to spam out removal on all the permanents here. You know, maybe Sphere the Thassa, cast a Verdict, pass turn, something like that.
And you can also ignore Anthony's Chase because Chase ticking up isn't nearly the same threat for Todd as it is for Anthony. He has to keep Anthony off of going ultimate, of course, but he can deal with that kind of incidentally.
Yeah, well, he's going to take the Jace. What he needs to stop from the way he can lose. So you always want to talk about that. Is that if Anthony just top decks a bunch of gainsays, and then suddenly Todd doesn't resolve any of these Sphinx's Revelations, that's how Todd loses the game. Which is probably why he takes the Jace, because that's just another insurance policy. It's another thing that it's the third gainsay that Anthony would have to top deck.
Sure.
We see a Jace plus from Todd. He's going to go ahead and last breath the Frostburn Weird, conveniently doing it while Anthony's tapped out.
Now this puts a lot of pressure on Anthony to reassemble Devotion for Thassa, and he's just running out of resources.
Yeah, he's running out of cards. He only gets one card a turn. Todd gets so many more, so he still has 5 cards, a pair of Revelations. And the Mutavault will get to swing. It'll get to put Jace down to 4, but that's about it from Anthony. He has a Dissolve, and he can protect the board, but the problem is he's not ahead on it.
And Todd with just so much power in his hand.
All right. Elspeth, he's found. This is I like this about the Saito build of Blue-White, is that, you know, this is the second Elspeth, and he does have the Archangel in hand. He has a lot more things to tap out for.
And also, because his win conditions are more redundant, he doesn't have to worry about, well, what happens if this one Elspeth gets countered? Even though I'm really far ahead, I don't actually have that many ways to win the game. Whereas Todd can throw these cards into counter spells, not really worry about it because the win conditions are redundant.
Well, I think when you aren't playing Elixir, you have to do that. You know, the Elixir deck really is playing a criminally low number of win conditions. And Saito, by cutting Elixir, you know, is now playing a lot of win cons. And there we go. Todd is able to land a last breath onto the Mutavault. Now Mutavault is down. Tidebinder Mage is the final card in Anthony's hand, and that's probably going to be a green light for Todd. No cards left. He can Detention Sphere and Verdict the board. So Sphere the Thassa, cast Archangel. And there we go. Todd, 2-0, defeats Anthony Lowry, moves on to 4-0. Anthony will fall to 3-1. Remember, this is a 10-round tournament, so players will have to get up to 8 or maybe 9 wins to make the top 8.